The Detroit Red Wings are finding their groove. They've won 6 of their last 7. Brian Fisher of Locked On Red Wings joins us to discuss the keys to their recent success and what they'll do come trade deadline time. All that and a lot more next on today's Locked On NHL Podcast.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Gil Martin here, and welcome everybody to the Monday edition of the Locked On NHL Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On NHL your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts so you never miss an episode. And thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are here, and FanDuel is officially in playoff mode. So visit FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost pack every NFL playoff game day. It is great to welcome back to the show the co-host of Locked On Red Wings, Brian Fisher. And Brian, you got to be happy lately. 6 out of your last 7, a dramatic overtime win over the Senators on Sunday. What has been the keys to the recent success of the Detroit Red Wings?
Well, I think the biggest key for them in this current stretch has been John Gibson, without a shadow of a doubt. He started the season rough, very bad, so bad to the effect that between him and Talbot, Red Wings fans were wondering, should they give Sebastian Cossa that actual shot at the NHL level? But then in December, he shut out the Vancouver Canucks in Vancouver 4-0, and he hasn't looked back. He went from being one of the worst goaltenders in the NHL with like an .863 save percentage to now, since December 1st until now, he is second in the NHL in save percentage with a .926, behind only your New York Islanders' Ilya Sorokin, who has been obviously, going to get Vezina votes, might win the Vezina this year with how well he's been playing. And I mean, I can't say enough good things about how John Gibson has played. He's brought his save percentage on the season from .863 or whatever it is up to .903, which is above league average. And again, I already said in that span how good he's been. But beyond that, it's just like timeliness. Certain players get cold just in time for other players to get hot. It's like a passing of the torch almost, where the team's lows in years past, when they got low, would carry, and they would go on long losing streaks that would effectively knock them out of playoff races. This season, they've had a couple of bad games, a couple back-to-back, although they just had back-to-back losses for the first time since like November last week, but they don't let it fester. They get right back on their horse, and we saw it. They lost to the Bruins last week. Then they come out and they beat the Sharks and the Ottawa Senators this weekend.
What has Gibson done differently that has led to this change in his statistics?
I don't know if he's done anything differently other than just settled in. Because, and Todd McClellan talked about it for a long time when he was struggling, and us Red Wings fans, silly us, getting impatient and, always being ready for a change. McClellan preached patience, and he talked about how, he's spent his entire organization, his entire career with one organization, the Anaheim Ducks. He went through the highs of a playoff caliber team trying to win a Stanley Cup to the lows of a rebuild. And now all of a sudden he's in a different city, he's in a different organization, it's all different. And he preached that, give him time, he'll be fine. And I think that's really all it was. He got that shutout in Vancouver. He played great, and it's like a switch got flipped. And all of a sudden, he was locked in. And he's been that way. The game against Ottawa, his stats don't look the best. He allowed 3 goals on less than 30 shots. So it was a .878 save percentage. I actually have the numbers up right in front of me here. It was a .864 save percentage. But he played good in that game, too. It was 2 power play goals, which, are going to always do damage against you. I think he's been very, very good. And as far as explanation, I think it's just time. I think it just took time.
Is scoring depth a concern for this team right now?
Not as much as it used to be. That was a huge problem at the start of the season, and we had conversations about it, that the Red Wings desperately needed production from the bottom 6, because at the start of the year, it was just Larkin, it was just Raymond scoring goals. DeBrincat started the season without a goal for the first 9 games, and then he turned it on, and he's got like the team leading 26 goals, and he's been incredible. Scored the OT winner against the Ottawa Senators, who, whenever he's in Ottawa, they boot him off the ice, essentially. So I'm sure that felt good for him. This game was in Detroit, however. But the key depth scorer for Detroit, because it hasn't been a lot. You're right. You're right to point it out. They haven't gotten a lot of scoring from their bottom six, but there has been one guy in their bottom six who's been scoring goals like crazy, and that is 37-year-old James Van Riemsdyk, who scored his 100th career power play goal against the Ottawa Senators. And I don't know if you've seen the highlight yet, Gil, because this game, obviously we're recording right after this game happened. He brought the puck between his legs and scored on the power play in the net front. And against Carolina, a net front goal again. He's so good, even at his age. So it's one of those things that just doesn't degrade as age goes on, is that puck handling skills in the net front, at corralling the rebound or a redirect and just tucking it around the goalie. He's done it time and time and time again at 5-on-5 and on the power play, especially on the power play. He's been their key contributor on the depth scoring. I think where is he, in fact, on the Red Wings goal chart at the moment? He's currently fourth on the team in goals with 12. So, yeah, and he's playing bottom 6 minutes at night in and night out. He's been locked down, and they're going to need more contribution from the bottom six, and I've liked a lot of what I've seen from the Mason Appleton, Michael Rasmussen, and Elmer Soderblom line. Every single game, that those three are out there. They're very good at creating pressure. They just aren't as good at finishing on the pressure. But I think it'll come.
The standings right now are so tight. I mean, the Wings are tied for first right now, but it is so tight in the Atlantic Division, in the Eastern Conference. How do you see management handling the trade deadline, and what, if anything, are they looking to add once we get closer?
Well, priority number one is a top 4 defenseman. And I think that they recognize that and they see that, because Axel Sandin-Pellikka is playing on the second pair, and he did score on the power play against Ottawa. But they are very careful with how they deploy him. In tight games, there'll be long stretches near the end of every period where he's not playing. He played 9 minutes on Friday against the San Jose Sharks overall as a second-pair defenseman, because they're being very careful. He's only 20 years old. He's clearly not like NHL strong yet, but they want to play to his offensive instincts. So you're effectively playing 5 defensemen every single game, and that's not sustainable for long stretches of time. So I think Yzerman recognizes that they need a top 4 defenseman, and there have been reports that they're in on Rasmus Andersson, or they were at least up until a couple days ago, and now he's been dealt to Vegas, and they've touched base with Dougie Hamilton in New Jersey. So he recognizes that's an issue. I think the other issue, too, is they still need a top-line left wing. They don't have a solution there. It was Emmett Finney, who was a 20-year-old rookie, 7th-round pick, incredible story. But his production after his hot start has cooled off. They don't really have a left winger for the Raymond and Larkin line, and they desperately need one. So I know they're out there looking for that. The question becomes is you can recognize what you need, but is Yzerman willing to give up for the cost? And that's been the problem with Yzerman lately. I won't say problem, that's not the right word, but he's been very careful because he does recognize where this team is at. Vegas can give up a first and a conditional second that can turn into a first, a player and a prospect for a rental like Rasmus Andersson, because they're going all in on a cup. But if the Red Wings give up all those assets for a rental that walks away and all you did was a first-round exit and then you lose all those picks, it's about, I think Yzerman wants to go get a top 4 defenseman with term, which is why I think they wanted Rasmus Andersson with an extension, or maybe someone like Dougie Hamilton, who is getting paid $9 million a year, but I don't know if you've seen Red Wings lead the league in cap space right now. So I think there's a fit there, and it would allow them to bump ASP down to the third pair and really stabilize that second pair. Be a huge addition for them. You got to be willing at some point to pull the trigger on trades that make you a little uncomfortable if you want this team to make the playoffs, because they're absolutely buyers right now. They have to be buyers. Right. This team, more so than the last few years when I've been incredibly frustrated with them, they have to be buyers this season. Because last year they made one trade. It was for Peter Mrazek, and they dealt Veleno out of town. It was a nothing move. It was a nothing burger. You traded away Joe Veleno, who was struggling, for a struggling goaltender in Peter Mrazek. Then you dealt him away in the summer for John Gibson. So you got to be aggressive more so than ever, because more so than ever in years past, you were in the driver's seat in this division. And that's something that we haven't been able to say since 2016.
Going to be an interesting second half of the season, I'm sure. Brian, why don't you tell our viewers and our listeners where they could find the podcast and where they could find you and your co-host on social media?
Well, you can find the podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts. Apple, Spotify, YouTube if you like the video format, the Odyssey app, Amazon, anywhere, really. And on social media, you can find me at Brian Fisher, LORW, on Twitter, and Scotty at Bentley Scotty on Twitter, and then Locked On account on Twitter is at LO_Red Wings. So good content, good time to be a Red Wings fan. Praying for no March collapse this year, because March has been their plague the last few seasons.
Well, we'll see how that plays out. Brian, thank you so much.
You're very welcome, Gil. Anytime. I appreciate you inviting me on.
Today's episode is brought to you by Indeed. If you've ever hired someone who looked good on paper but wasn't the right fit, you know how important that is. When you want candidates who truly match what you're looking for, trust Indeed sponsored jobs. Hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed sponsored jobs puts your post at the top of the page and helps you reach the right candidates faster. Instead of struggling to get your job post seen, Indeed sponsored jobs helps get your listing to stand out and reach quality candidates faster. Sponsored jobs boost your post to the people who are the best match for your role, and that makes a real difference. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed are 90% more likely to report a hire than non-sponsored jobs. Spend more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with less stress, less time, and more results using Indeed sponsored jobs. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help give your job the premium placement it deserves at Indeed.com/locked-on. Go to Indeed.com/locked-on right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, do it the right way with Indeed.